Before the skyscrapers. Before the red buses. Before the underground. Before the crowded streets and glowing city lights. London looked completely different. The streets were narrow. Horses moved through the roads. Ships crowded the river Thames. Wooden houses stood close together. And at night, much of the city disappeared into darkness. But this was London. A city that would survive fires, plagues, wars, pollution, and enormous changes. And eventually become one of the most famous cities in the world. Today, London looks modern. But beneath that modern city are thousands of years of history. So instead of beginning with the London we know today, let's go back. Back to the old city. Back to the streets before the skyscrapers. And then step by step, we will watch London become the city it is today. This is London. From old to new. Welcome to History Uncovered. The land before London. Long before London became a great capital, the landscape around the River Thames was very different. There was no enormous city. No famous skyline. No Tower Bridge. No Westminster. Instead, there were riverside settlements, forests, fields, and small communities. The River Thames was already important. It provided water. It supported fishing. And most importantly, it created a natural route for transportation. People could travel along the river far more easily than across difficult land. The Thames would eventually become the heart of London. But at this point, there was no London yet. Roman Indianums. Around 2,000 years ago, the Romans arrived in Britain. And near the River Thames, they established a settlement that became known as Londinium. This was the beginning of a city that would eventually become London. Roman Londinium was busy. There were roads, markets, warehouses, homes, public buildings, and a bridge across the Thames. Merchants arrived with goods. Ships traveled along the river. Roman roads connected Londinium to other parts of Britain. The city was becoming a center of trade. But Roman London would have looked nothing like the London we know today. There were no modern roads. No cars. No electricity. No skyscrapers. Instead, people walked through streets filled with animals, merchants, and carts. The river was crowded with boats. And buildings were constructed using Roman engineering techniques. For a time, Londinium became one of the most important settlements in Roman Britain. But Roman power eventually disappeared from Britain. The city changed. The population declined. And the Roman world gave way to a new era. Medieval London. Centuries passed. London slowly grew again. By the Middle Ages, it had become an important medieval city. But imagine walking into London at this time. The city would feel completely unfamiliar. The streets were narrow. Buildings were crowded together. Many were made of timber. Markets filled public spaces. Horses and carts moved through busy lanes. People worked, traded, and lived close together. There was no modern sanitation. No electricity. No organized fire service. And no modern transportation system. The Thames was still one of London's most important highways. Boats carried food, timber, and other goods. Merchants depended on the river. The city depended on the river. And London continued growing. But with growth came danger. The wooden buildings were extremely vulnerable to fire. And eventually, one of the most famous disasters in London's history would prove just how dangerous the old city could be. London before the Great Fire. By the 17th century, London had become one of Europe's largest cities. The population was growing rapidly. Markets were crowded. Merchants were becoming wealthy. Royal government was expanding. And the city was becoming increasingly important. But much of central London still had the appearance of a medieval city. Timber houses stood close together. Streets were narrow. Buildings often extended over the roads. Open fires were common, and a single accident could become disastrous. Then, in September 1666, a fire began on Pudding Lane. The Great Fire of 1666. At first it was a small fire, but London's buildings were perfect fuel. Wooden structures, narrow streets, dry conditions, strong winds. The flames spread rapidly. House after house caught fire. People fled through the streets. Smoke filled the sky. Churches burned. Homes disappeared. Entire neighborhoods were destroyed. For several days, London was transformed into a giant fire. When the flames finally stopped, much of the city of London had been destroyed. Thousands of homes were gone. Many churches had burned. The medieval appearance of the city had been devastated. But London did not disappear. Instead, it began again. London rises from the ashes. The destruction created something London had rarely experienced before. A chance to rebuild. New buildings were constructed. Brick and stone became more important. Streets were redesigned. And one of the greatest architects of the rebuilding era emerged. Christopher Wren. Wren became responsible for the rebuilding of many churches. His greatest work was St. Paul's Cathedral. The cathedral became one of the defining landmarks of London's skyline. The old timber city was slowly being replaced. But London was not becoming modern yet. It was simply becoming a new version of an old city. And then another transformation began. The Industrial Revolution. During the 18th and 19th centuries, Britain entered the Industrial Revolution. And London changed dramatically. Factories expanded. Trade increased. New industries appeared. People arrived from across Britain. The population exploded. London spread outward. New neighborhoods appeared. The city became larger and more crowded than ever before. But industrial growth came with a price. Pollution increased. Poor neighborhoods became overcrowded. Disease spread easily. The difference between wealthy and poor Londoners could be enormous. Yet something else was changing. Transportation. The age of railways. Before railways, traveling across London could be slow. Horses and carts filled the streets. Walking was essential. But railways changed everything. Large railway stations appeared. Trains connected London with the rest of Britain. People could travel farther and faster. And London began expanding around the railway network. Then came another revolutionary idea. A railway beneath the city. In 1863, the Metropolitan Railway opened. It became the beginning of the London Underground. Imagine the strange contrast. Above the streets, horses and carts. Below the streets, steam-powered trains. London was entering the modern age. Victorian London. During the Victorian era, London transformed again. New bridges appeared. New railway stations were constructed. Public buildings became larger. The Thames became increasingly busy with ships. And in 1894, another famous landmark opened. Tower Bridge. Its towers quickly became one of the defining images of London. But the city around the bridge was very different from today. The river was filled with industrial traffic. Warehouses lined parts of the waterfront. Factories and working-class neighborhoods surrounded many areas. London was powerful. London was wealthy. But London was also dirty and crowded. The Thames itself became severely polluted. And the city would soon face another environmental crisis. The Great Stink. During the 19th century, London's sewage problem became increasingly serious. Waste entered the River Thames. The smell became unbearable. In the summer of 1858, the situation became so bad that London experienced what became known as the Great Stink. The problem was not simply unpleasant. It was a serious public health danger. The crisis helped force authorities to improve London's sewage system. Huge engineering projects transformed the city's underground infrastructure. Once again, London changed because the old system could no longer survive. The city was becoming more modern, and the 20th century would accelerate that transformation. London around 1900. By the beginning of the 20th century, London was becoming recognizable as a modern city. Electricity was spreading. Street lighting was improving. Buses and trams were appearing. The underground was expanding. Cars were beginning to appear. Photography captured London streets in incredible detail. And this is where the past becomes especially fascinating. Look at photographs from around 1900. You can recognize many streets. You can recognize some buildings. You can recognize the Thames. But the people are different. The clothing is different. The vehicles are different. The advertisements are different. The atmosphere is different. It is the same city, but another world. London during World War I. Then London entered the age of modern warfare. World War I changed Britain. The city experienced air raids. Families were affected by the conflict. Young men left London for the battlefields. The war changed society. But the city continued. London entered the 1920s and 1930s with new technology, new transportation, and a rapidly changing culture. Cars became more common. Buses became an essential part of daily life. The underground expanded. And London continued growing. But another war was coming. London during World War I. In 1940, London faced one of the darkest periods in its history. The Blitz. German aircraft attacked the city repeatedly. Buildings were destroyed. Homes were damaged. Fires burned across London. People slept in shelters. Air raid sirens became part of everyday life. The city's skyline was transformed by destruction. Some historic buildings survived. Others were damaged. Entire neighborhoods were changed. But once again, London survived. When the war ended, another enormous challenge began. Rebuilding. Post-war London. After World War I, London was a city in transition. Bomb-damaged areas needed reconstruction. Housing was desperately needed. Modern buildings began appearing. Old neighborhoods were demolished or rebuilt. Roads were redesigned. Transportation continued developing. And London entered a new era. Some people wanted to preserve the old city. Others wanted a completely modern capital. The debate between history and modernization would continue for decades. But slowly, another London began appearing. The modern city rises. During the second half of the 20th century, London's skyline changed. Modern offices appeared. Shopping centers expanded. New residential areas developed. The financial district grew. The city became increasingly international. People arrived from all over the world. London became more culturally diverse. And technology changed everyday life. Television, computers, mobile phones, the internet. The city was no longer simply a British capital. It was becoming a global city. The Thames then and now. And through all of these changes, the Thames remained. Think about how much this river has seen. Roman ships, medieval merchants, Tudor London, the Great Fire, Victorian steamships, industrial pollution, World War I, modern tourism. Today, the Thames is surrounded by a completely different city. Modern buildings rise along the waterfront. Tourist boats move across the river. Restaurants and cultural spaces occupy areas that were once industrial. The river is cleaner. The skyline is taller. But the Thames itself continues flowing through the same landscape. This is perhaps the clearest example of London's transformation. The city changes around the river. But the river remains. The landmarks then and now. Now look at London's famous landmarks. St. Paul's Cathedral, once surrounded by a very different city. Today, it stands among modern roads and buildings. Tower Bridge, once a symbol of Victorian engineering. Today, one of the most photographed bridges in the world. The Tower of London, once a fortress and royal stronghold. Today, a major historical attraction. Westminster, once a medieval center of royal and political power. Today, the heart of British government. The landmarks survived, but London around them changed. That is what makes the city so unusual. History and modernity exist side by side. The city beneath the city. But perhaps the most fascinating part of modern London is what you cannot see. Beneath the streets, there is another London. Archaeologists have discovered Roman walls, ancient roads, medieval foundations, old wells, buried objects, fragments of buildings. Every construction project has the potential to reveal another piece of London's past. This means that modern London is literally built on top of earlier Londons. You can stand beside a modern office building, while Roman London exists beneath the ground. You can walk through a modern street, where medieval Londoners once walked. You can travel on the underground, through tunnels surrounded by layers of history. London is not one city. It is thousands of years of cities stacked together. London today. And now, we return to the London we know. The skyscrapers are back. The red buses are back. The underground is moving beneath the streets. The Thames reflects the modern skyline. People from around the world fill the city. The Shard rises above the skyline. Canary Wharf stands where industrial activity once dominated. Modern offices surround historic buildings. Technology controls almost every part of daily life. Yet the old city has never completely disappeared. You can still find medieval streets, Victorian railway stations, Roman remains, historic churches, old markets, ancient walls. London's past is not hidden in one museum. It is spread throughout the city. Then and now. So let's compare. 400 years ago, London was a crowded timber city. Today, it is a global metropolis. 400 years ago, people traveled by horse and boat. Today, millions travel by underground, train, bus, car, and airplane. 400 years ago, the skyline was dominated by church towers. Today, glass skyscrapers rise above the city. 400 years ago, the Thames was a major commercial highway. Today, it remains an important part of London's identity. 400 years ago, fire could destroy entire neighborhoods. Today, London has modern emergency services and infrastructure. 400 years ago, people lived without electricity. Today, London operates as one of the world's major technological and financial centers. Almost everything changed. But not everything. The people. The most important connection between Old London and New London is not a building. It is the people. People in Old London woke up. They worked. They traded. They raised families. They worried about money. They celebrated. They experienced disasters. They dreamed about better lives. Modern Londoners do the same things. The technology is different. The buildings are different. The clothes are different. But human life has many similarities. A Londoner from 1700 could not imagine the world we live in today. And a person living today would probably struggle to understand what everyday life was like in 1700. Yet both people would recognize something. The desire to build a better life. Why London never stopped changing. London's history is really a history of adaptation. When fire destroyed the old city, London rebuilt. When industrialization created new problems, London developed new infrastructure. When the streets became crowded, railways and the underground expanded. When pollution became dangerous, new sewage systems were created. When war destroyed neighborhoods, the city rebuilt again. London survived because it changed. It never remained frozen in one period of history. And that may be the greatest lesson of the city. The final journey. So imagine taking one final journey. Start in modern London. Then slowly remove the skyscrapers. Remove the modern traffic. Remove the buses. Remove the cars. Remove the electricity. The city becomes quieter. Now remove the Victorian buildings. The railway stations disappear. Tower Bridge disappears. The industrial city fades. Continue backwards. The Great Fire disappears. The rebuilt churches disappear. The medieval streets return. The timber houses return. The horses return. And finally, go back even further. The Roman roads appear. Londinium returns. The Thames is still there. And then, even Roman London disappears. Only the river remains. The landscape becomes quiet again. And somewhere in that landscape, the story of London begins. From old to new. Then slowly move forward again. Roman Londinium. Medieval London. Tudor London. The London of the Great Fire. The rebuilt city. Victorian London. The railway age. The 20th century. The wartime city. The post-war city. And finally, modern London. One city. Thousands of years. Countless generations. Millions of stories. Final message. London is often described as a modern global capital. But that is only the final chapter. The city we see today is built on everything that came before it. Every street has a past. Every bridge has a story. Every old building has survived another chapter. And beneath the modern streets, there are still pieces of forgotten Londons waiting to be discovered. The greatest transformation is not that London became modern. The greatest transformation is that London kept changing. Without completely losing its past. The medieval city is gone. But traces of it remain. The Victorian city has changed. But its buildings remain. The wartime city has been rebuilt. But its scars remain in history. And the modern city continues growing. One day, today's London will also become history. The skyscrapers we see today will eventually become old photographs. The cars will become museum pieces. Today's streets will become yesterday's streets. And future generations may look at photographs of our London. Just as we look at photographs of theirs. They will see a city that once seemed modern. They will wonder how people lived here. They will compare their world with ours. And perhaps they will realize the same thing we have discovered today. Cities are never finished. They are constantly becoming something new. London was once a Roman settlement. Then a medieval city. Then a royal capital. Then an industrial metropolis. Then a wartime city. And now, a global capital. But underneath every new London, the old London remains. That is the real story of this city. Not simply how London became modern, but how thousands of years of history became part of the city we see today. So the next time you walk through London, look around. Look beyond the traffic. Look beyond the advertisements. Look beyond the skyscrapers. Imagine the horses. Imagine the markets. Imagine the ships. Imagine the medieval streets. Imagine the Roman roads. Because somewhere beneath the modern city, the old London is still there, waiting to be uncovered. This is history uncovered. And this was London. From old to new. Subscribe my channel.